This is Geek Revolution Radio,
a show for geeks by geeks.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Geek Revolution Radio. I am your host, Ryan Bennett, and with me, as always, is Mr. Will Hatton.
Hey, what's going on? This is a good day. Excited for this episode, man.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. So on this week's show, we are going to discuss horror movies, and we're going to discuss ones that are good movies, and then also the ones that really terrified us as, I was going to say as kids, but some of these terrified me as a teenager or young adult as well.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I get afraid or scared anymore because I'm an adult, I'm tough, but
you're jaded.
Some of them put me on the edge. We'll put it that way.
It's funny because some of these that we're going to talk about, even now when I go back and watch them, there's it's like reliving my childhood because there's still some part of me that's terrified by some of these films. So that's going to be a fun time. So we're going to talk about that in segment 2. But before we get to that, I wanted to take just a quick minute here. And today is the 20th anniversary of Pokemon. And this is honestly, Will, I really sat down and thought about it. And of all the video games out there in the world, other than maybe Final Fantasy VII, the Pokemon franchise games are definitely my favorite. I play them all the time, and they just released Red, Blue, and Yellow, like the original ones from Game Boy on the 3DS, and I was patiently waiting around until midnight Eastern rolled around, and I immediately downloaded it and I played for about an hour last night, and man, it's just a fun little game, and I love that it's on handheld. That's probably the best part of it, is you can just kind of play it while you're going around doing stuff. You don't have to sit, and be hooked up to a console and all that kind of stuff.
I've never gotten into the games. Like, I think we've mentioned it before on the show. Like, my brother's a huge fan, but I've always had like a appreciation for it,
Yeah, it's just cool because like they have it on I don't know, they like it. It's like an old original Game Boy game, so firing it up, you get that old classic iconic, Game Boy sound, and it was just, I don't know, it was kind of fun. So, 20th anniversary. I can't believe it's already been 20 years. It's been a good 20 years. They also announced yesterday the next generation of Pokemon games, and they're doing one called, they're called Pokemon Sun and Moon are the next ones, and they said they're coming out around holiday towards the end of this year, so that should be pretty cool. For the next couple weeks, though, I'm going to have my head buried in the original. I bought Pokemon Yellow because I like playing with Pikachu, and we'll see if I can catch them all, because I was able to dominate some of the like newer ones and catch every one that's in the game at least, but I've never caught the original 151. So I'm definitely up for the challenge. I'm pretty excited about it. So
yeah, whenever it comes out, you're going to be pretty busy.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife has already been like, well, I guess we're not going to see Dad much the next couple of days. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'll be sitting right here. I just won't be paying attention.
You'll be there, but you won't be there.
Yeah. So also coming out, I guess, probably as you're listening to this, they happened last night, were the Oscars. And we were going to do this a couple weeks ago, and it totally slipped our minds, but we wanted to like take a minute and kind of go through and do some Oscar picks. And also we put up a poll on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Geek Revolution Radio, and had some of you guys vote on what you thought was going to win. And we only did, there's a lot of weird categories now for the Oscars. Have you noticed that, Will?
Well, I mean, they just like, there's the big 5 or 6 or 7, that everybody really pays attention to. But then there's like, the long, I mean, it's a pretty lengthy list. I've always been familiar with them, but I've never really cared. I mean, sound mixing, that's a category. Short film, music from a film, like all these, those are kind of like the smaller, ones that people don't really pay attention to.
Yeah.
But
so I just basically put the poll together for, I don't know, like 7 or so of the, ones that were the most interesting, I guess.
Right.
So I guess, do you want to just go through them, and then we'll both make our picks, and then we'll reveal what the poll said, and then, maybe next week or something, or we don't even have to go over the winners because everybody that will have listened to this knows who won. So
Yeah.
So let's just start off with, I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. Visual effects. And I threw this category in there because It's one of the categories that Star Wars was nominated for. Your choices are Star Wars: The Force Awakens, The Revenant, Ex Machina, Mad Max, or The Martian for visual effects. What's your pick, Will?
That's a tough one because I thought Ex Machina, whatever. I thought that was a really good film.
Yeah.
You know, it had like really cool effects in terms of like just the kind of things that they went into the making of that film. You know, to make this like character look like a robot, like that's an actual woman. You know.
Yeah, I thought the same thing about Mad Max. Mad Max had some great.
Mad Max was really good. And the Martian. I mean, that's literally another planet. You know.
Yeah. But it's just really Arizona, right? Like, like Utah. Yeah. They probably shot a lot of it in Utah. Yeah.
I don't know why The Revenant's on this list. Honestly,
I was wondering the same thing. I haven't seen The Revenant, but it doesn't seem like. I guess maybe because of the bear. The bear was definitely like CGI. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a bear fight scene that looks incredibly real. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be able to tell you. You know, you look at movies like 20 years ago and you're like, oh yeah, that's totally fake. That's not real. But this was legit. And I think if that's where they're getting their feel for visual effects, then yeah, it was incredible. And I don't want to pick Star Wars just for the sake of saying, you know, I think I love Star Wars, so I'm just going to automatically pick that because it's got some real competition here.
Mm-hmm. I picked Star Wars for visual effects because I thought this was Star Wars by far for visual effects, and you're talking practical and CGI. Mm-hmm. It definitely had the best of both worlds, and I think they actually made a big impact on the visual effects industry, if you will, because they went back and kind of said, okay, we could do this whole thing green screen, but we're not going to. We're going to do a lot of practical effects in there too, which visually add to the movie. That's why I picked The Force Awakens. What is your pick though?
I'm going to have to go with the Force Awakens as well. A lot of the same reasons that you just listed, but like I just look at the other movies and I feel like Mad Max was just incredible. There's some really amazing effects. But there's also some really great cinematography. So I feel like that one kind of leans more in my mind to cinematography than it does visual effects.
Well, that's actually the next category, and that was also so for best cinematography, my pick was Mad Max.
I mean, what are the other movies? What are we?
So for cinematography, we have Mad Max, The Revenant, Carol, The Hateful Eight, and Sicario. Oh, and I should reveal on the visual effects one that pretty much 80% of you said that The Force Awakens will win that, and 20% of you said The Revenant. So,
oh, nice, good to know.
Yeah. So what do you think about cinematography? So are you on board with Mad Max?
So I've only seen 3 of them. I've seen Mad Max, The Revenant, and Sicario. And I just from what I've seen from Carol and The Hateful Eight, the Mad Max has got it hands down. The Revenant is maybe a close second because the cinematography in that movie is incredible.
Yeah, it's shot well.
It's a beautiful movie. Like the like nature scenes, the shots that they take are really cool. But Mad Max was pretty freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and not only that, but the cinematography in Mad Max was like kind of different than anything that we've seen for like a while, especially when you look at like how the universe was designed and stuff, and the way it was shot basically on running cars that are in the desert. I thought it was real cool. I liked it.
Yeah.
So next category, and I should say that for that one, 60% of you said Mad Max, and 40% of you said The Revenant.
Oh, okay.
So pretty close. Best director, your choices are Alejandro, whatever his name is, that did The Revenant.
Yeah.
George Miller for Mad Max, Lenny Abrahamson for The Room, Adam McKay for The Big Short, and Tom McCarthy for Spotlight.
I probably would go with The Revenant on this one. I thought the directing in Mad Max is pretty good. I still haven't seen Big Short or Spotlight, which are two movies that I really kind of want to see. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to see them yet.
Yeah,
and I know a little bit about The Room. I know it's as far as directing goes, I hear it's pretty wild.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna have to go with The Revenant on this one.
I ironically also went with The Revenant, because I don't know. I went with The Revenant, but I also kind of was leaning towards Mad Max. Because when you think about Best Director, I think it's going to be one of those two movies. And the reason I think Mad Max has a good running in it is because without George Miller, the guy who directed Mad Max, doing that movie the way it did, that movie conceptually shouldn't work, right? Like, I don't even know how they got the studio to buy it, because it sounds like a bad idea for a movie.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
But the execution of the movie, the directing, the cinematography were both really spot on, and made Mad Max a multi-Oscar nominee this year.
Yeah, and I don't think, just the fact when it came out and you saw the trailers for it, this is going to be, I was excited from day one, but being nominated for a Best Picture or directing or some of these nominations, I'm just like, wow,
Yeah.
And I think it's deserved. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with Mad Max. So the results we got on that were we got 60% The Revenant, 20% Mad Max, which I guess was me, and 20% for Room, actually, from Lenny Abrahamson. So that's interesting. I haven't seen Room yet, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. My friend Joey, actually, that's a filmmaker, he just watched it and said it was amazing. He did like a whole long thing about it on Facebook. So, all right, now we're going to start getting into the more interesting ones here. So, for supporting actress, we have Kate Winslet in Steve Jobs, Jennifer Jason Leigh for The Hateful Eight, Rachel McAdams for Spotlight, Alicia Vikander for The Danish Girl, and Rooney Mara for Carol.
This is one of those things where I haven't seen a single one of the movies. So
I had to go with the only one that I saw, which was Steve Jobs. So I picked Kate Winslet. So plus I liked the idea of Kate winning for that, and then maybe DiCaprio will win for the other one. So,
that'd be kind of interesting.
Like some kind of like a weird reuniting for Titanic.
I this one's just kind of up in the air for me because I really don't know.
Yeah, I guess if you haven't seen any of them, then it's hard to say. And we should have. I guess if we'd have thought ahead enough, we should have went through and watched all these movies. That would have been kind of fun.
Yeah, that would be the best way to do it. But like some of these movies are like, there's a lot going on.
I can already tell you, I wouldn't like The Danish Girl or Carol. So.
I don't think I would hate them, but they're not going to be like my favorites.
So the results for supporting actress were 40% for Kate Winslet, 20% for Jennifer Jason Leigh in The Hateful Eight, 20% for Rachel McAdams in Spotlight, and 20% for Alicia Vikander in The Danish Girl. So that's a pretty even spread in there. So I guess that could go any way.
I'm going to guess that it goes like, if I'm guessing who's going to actually win, I'll probably say Rachel McAdams.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know. I feel like she should be in the penalty box a little bit longer for season 2 of True Detective. But, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because apparently in Spotlight she can act, but not so much in that.
I don't feel like it's her fault.
Maybe it was the writing.
Definitely other reasons why season 2 was horrible.
Supporting actor, in my opinion, is going to be a landslide to one guy, and it's the guy that I picked. So for supporting actor, I picked Sylvester Stallone in Creed. Your other choices are Tom Hardy in The Revenant, Mark Ruffalo in Spotlight, Christian Bale in The Big Short, and Mark Rylance in Bridge of Spies. Who do you pick, Will?
Well, I haven't seen Creed yet. I've seen The Revenant. I hear really good things about Mark Ruffalo and Christian Bale's performance in those two movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say it's either with your pick with Sylvester Stallone, or I'd go with Tom Hardy, and I'm going to go with Tom Hardy because he is just incredible in this film. The Revenant,
yeah,
just lights out awesome.
I hope that they don't try to be anti-racist so much that they don't pick Sylvester Stallone because the main guy in Creed didn't get nominated for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. I have a feeling that the show is just going to be a mess this year because of everything that everyone's been mad about with the racism and all that. But that's neither here nor there. We'll see who wins. For that one, the poll results were 60% for Sylvester Stallone, 20% for Tom Hardy, and 20% for Mark Ruffalo. For Best Actress, this one is pretty much a landslide in the poll. The choices are Brie Larson in Room, Cate Blanchett in Carol, Jennifer Lawrence in Joy, Charlotte Rampling in 45 Years, and I think it's pronounced Saoirse Ronan in Brooklyn. For this one, I picked Brie Larson in The Room. I haven't seen it, but I've seen clips of it, and it just seems like, from everything I've heard about this movie, that this is probably going to be a pretty easy win for Brie Larson. What do you think, Will?
You know, not knowing these movies at all, I think you're right. You know who Brie Larson is, don't you?
Yeah, she's from Scott Pilgrim, bro.
Yeah, dude.
And the upcoming Cloverfield 2, right?
No. That's a different girl. That's Cloverfield 2. That's the main girl from Scott Pilgrim. Brie Larson was the ex-girlfriend, the rock singer.
That's the same girl that's in Cloverfield.
No, the new girl in Cloverfield's she's got the 3 name. I always freaking slaughter names.
What's it called? 10 Cloverfield.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead is the girl from Cloverfield.
I thought it was the same person.
Yeah, no, but both very good. That's a tangent. Going back to the actress in the leading role, I'm going to go with Brie Larson too. I hear really
right.
good
It
things
is the
about
different
her
girl.
performance. So I from what I've heard about this movie is it leaves you just debilitated, just crippled.
Yeah,
because it's such an impactful, emotional story, and so I'm kind of interested to see it.
Well, I'm pretty sure the movie is about a woman that gets kidnapped essentially and is left in a room for like 18 years, right? Like it's based on those true stories you hear about every now and again.
Yeah.
She has the guy has a kid with her, and she's just like stuck in the room.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intense.
Yeah. So for that one in the poll, and I think that even like the polls I've seen like on MSN and stuff like that, Brie Larson is at 80%. And then somebody cast a vote for Cate Blanchett for Carol in our poll, but I think that one's going to be an easy win for Brie Larson. All right, let's go to Best Actor. This one will be interesting because this one can go really any way because these people are all great. For these nominees, you have Leonardo DiCaprio for The Revenant, Matt Damon for The Martian, Bryan Cranston for Trumbo, Michael Fassbender for Steve Jobs, and Eddie Redmayne for The Danish Girl. Who do you like there, Will?
Yeah, man, this is another one of those tough ones because they're all great. If I had to start narrowing it down, I'm going to say Michael Fassbender gets knocked off the list. Although, I've heard really good things about his performance in Steve Jobs. I just don't feel like it's like he's the first one that gets nicked from the list, I think.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's down to 2 guys. I think it's Matt Damon or it's Leonardo DiCaprio. Because I thought Matt Damon was awesome in The Martian. I thought that film was really good.
I completely agree with you, but I don't think you can discredit Bryan Cranston though too.
And that's the thing. I don't want to discredit him because I hear really good things about Trumbo. Like the clips that I've seen, really great movie. And the same for Eddie Redmayne. I think a lot of people are talking about this one. I think it's kind of one of those socially conscious movies where the lead actor is taking on a really important or very socially conscious role. But to me, my thoughts are it's, Matt Damon or Leonardo DiCaprio. And I feel like people are going to pick Leonardo DiCaprio just because he hasn't won one. It's his time, blah, blah, blah.
So that's the thing you gotta wonder, right? Does the fact that since last year or the year before, whenever he was up for Wolf of Wall Street and he didn't win, does the social, outcry about the fact that he's never won an Oscar, does that play into him finally winning one, or does it have nothing to do with it? Does Matt Damon still win?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if the Academy goes based off of performances alone, his performance is great, but is it better than, say, Matt Damon or Bryan Cranston?
I wouldn't be surprised at all if it went to Bryan Cranston. I really wouldn't.
You wouldn't be surprised.
It wouldn't surprise me at all, because if you talk about who is the best actor, meaning their acting, they did the most radical transformation and disappeared into a role so well that you don't even recognize him. I mean, him as Trumbo, he does not look. You don't think it's Bryan Cranston. He doesn't look or act like Bryan Cranston.
It's Bryan freaking Cranston, though. I mean, like we have a definite love for Bryan Cranston here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is a hard one just to make a lock, but I think the winner, it's either going to be Matt Damon or it's going to be Leonardo DiCaprio. And I say, give it to Leo. Let's just put this stupid conversation behind us.
Let's make up for the fact that he didn't win for Titanic or for Wolf of Wall Street, both of which he should have won for.
Or The Departed.
Or The Departed.
Like a long freaking bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know about this one. So I think it's going to be those two. If they don't go with we need to give it to Leo, then I think they're going to give it to Matt.
We need to do a whole episode just on Leonardo DiCaprio movies. Because those are
he's got some incredible ones.
So we'll see how that one goes. The poll results were 80% for Leonardo and then 20% for Matt Damon. So we'll see what happens. I think it'd be hilarious, though, if Leonardo again just gets stifled. Like it's just kind of his thing. He's never going to win one. And then finally, the one that I think everyone cares the most about, Best Picture.
I'm going to say I cared the least about it because my favorite, or the movie that I thought was deserved in this list, didn't get nominated.
Okay, so let me run through the list, and then you can say which one you thought should have been nominated. So your choices are The Revenant, The Big Short, The Martian, Room, Bridge of Spies, Brooklyn, Mad Max, or Spotlight. And which one would you throw in there, Will?
Well, I'm not saying this just because I'm an uber Star Wars fan, but I thought it was kind of horrible that they didn't nominate Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more, because look at the social impact it has.
Well, not only that, but they had 2 extra nomination spots. They could nominate 10 films, and yet they decided to exclude it. Now, I get that you say a movie like The Big Short and Spotlight and Revenant are the 3 big ones that they're saying has a really good chance of getting it. I get that.
Yeah.
But I feel like if Star Wars was up there, I feel like it has it would be in the running. I think it would be like, maybe the 4th possible choice to go with.
Well, here's the thing. I think that if you're going to put Mad Max in there, that Star Wars should definitely be in there, because
absolutely,
Mad Max, maybe not specifically a science fiction movie, feels like a science fiction movie for sure.
No, I
just
think it's
set in a desert. Yeah. I mean, I don't understand how you can have Mad Max and not have Star Wars, because Star Wars was more I mean, if you look at the audience reactions to all of these movies, Star Wars had far bigger a reaction in the positive than any of those movies that are on that list. Any of them. If you went on the street and you polled people what their favorite film was of the year, I would guess that you'd get at least 5 out of every 10 people would say Star Wars.
Right.
That would be my guess.
I just thought it, like, when I was at work when they made the announcement. My friend was a big Oscar fan. Like he's really big into it. One of my coworkers, and he had it up on his laptop as they were like formally announcing them. Like they had somebody on stage announcing it, and when they got to the Best Picture and Star Wars didn't pop up, I was shocked. I was like, "Are you really? You're not even gonna put it in the running?"
Well, the Academy Awards went back and they repolled the critics, and because it came out in December, they repolled the critics for the Academy Awards that were back in January, and they ended up putting Star Wars in that for the conversation of Best Picture. So how it didn't get on this list is beyond me.
Yeah, I'm still pretty irritated to the point where I'm not really satisfied with the Oscars this year.
Yeah.
I think they've really fallen short on this one.
Yeah.
But if I have to make a choice, I have two choices. The one I think is going to win, and the one that I think is that I liked the best.
I have the same. Let's do that because I have the same thing. Who do you think is going to win? I think The Big Short and Spotlight cancel each other out because they're both like socially conscious, politico-journalistic type movies. So I think because they say there's three in the running. They say The Revenant, Spotlight, and The Big Short. Mm-hmm. Because I think those two kind of cancel each other out because they're essentially the same kind of film. I think that leaves you with The Revenant. So I think The Revenant wins. Yeah, and they did win the Academy Award back in January. So I agree. That's who I think is going to win.
You mean the gold? Was it the Golden Globe?
The Golden Globes. Yeah, sorry, the Golden Globes.
No,
now, if you're going to pick your favorite the movie that you enjoyed the most this year,
definitely Mad Max. I thought Mad Max was the funner or more enjoyable film. The Martian's like a close second.
See, that's what I go with. I go with the movie that I enjoyed the most this year, other than Star Wars, was The Martian. I liked The Martian more than Mad Max.
Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed Mad Max, and I really enjoyed The Martian. It's like a hard choice between the two that I like the most, and I feel like going back and based off of my memory of when I went and watched the movies, I feel like I left Mad Max enjoying it more.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see Mad Max until after it was out on like Redbox. So maybe the movie theater. I didn't see it in the movie theater, and I heard that was a real good movie to see in the theater. But I did see The Martian in the theater on my birthday at the Draft House, so that was a great experience. But
we went and saw both of those in the theater and really enjoyed them both.
Yeah. So the poll results were 40% for The Revenant, and then 20% apiece for The Big Short, The Martian, and Room. We'll see. I don't know. I feel like that one could go anyway, but I stand with you, Will. I think it's a damn shame that Star Wars. And I don't by any stretch of the imagination think that Star Wars would have won because it's not artsy enough for the movies that generally win that category. But like I said, it should have definitely have gotten the nod. So anyway, let us know if you watch the Oscars and you feel the same way. Just let us know on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Geek Revolution Radio. And I look forward to watching the Oscars. So
yeah, it'll be a fun show. I generally don't like award shows, but my wife loves them, so we're probably going to end up watching it. And
I'm not looking forward to Chris Rock as the host. I'll tell you that much.
No, I love Chris Rock. I think he's awesome.
I do too, but I know that he's going to do 90% like race-based humor, and I'm just over it. I'm so over it.
I don't know. I feel like it'll be interesting. I think you're right, though.
So let's go ahead and do this week's hypothetical. For this week's hypothetical, we want to know, if you could live in the universe of any TV show, what would you choose? Did you have a chance to think about this deeply, Will, and ponder your thoughts? Well,
and I love reading the question like maybe 30 minutes before we do the show, so I don't have a whole lot of time to think about it, because like sometimes if you sit and think about it too long, you're like, well, then there's this one.
This is the thing you got to think about too. You're gonna live in the universe. It doesn't, like, if you pick Star Wars, Rebels, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be a Jedi. you're probably going to be a schmuck on Tatooine that gets pushed around by
some nobody.
Yeah, you're going to be basically, you're not going to be like an automatic Jedi or whatever the great thing is in that. This is just, in the universe. Like if you picked Battlestar, you're probably going to be one of the people that gets killed on Earth. Right.
Yeah, I'm like the crew member number 75 that nobody thinks about.
Yeah.
You're
definitely a red shirt.
There's a lot of fantastical stories out there, and then there's like our actual worlds. And so like half the time, you look at like, oh, I want to live in Law and Order, like you just like
you're already living it, bro.
Yeah,
I want to live in Making a Murderer.
So I don't know. Then there's some good choices out there. I think there's some like very fantastical. It would have to be something where I'd actually likely have some kind of superpower or have a better chance at superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I probably would go with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay. Yeah, that would be kind of a fun world to live in because, like that crane that fell down in New York City a couple weeks ago. Like if you lived in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you'd be like, freaking Spider-Man, where was he? Yeah. That was up to him.
I think I would pick that one just because in the show, they kind of explore like different ways where like normal people become like get exposed to like alien technology or something and become exposed and I think that'd be kind of cool. I mean, it's like you always run the risk of like having like a really crappy superpower or something like that.
You'd still live in a world though where the Avengers are a real thing, which would be kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think I would probably go with that one. What would you go with?
Well, I thought I had a couple lines of thought, I guess. I had 3 specific shows that stuck in my mind, and 2 of them are similar. The two that I kind of stuck with were Gilligan's Island or Lost. Because I think it'd be fun to be like on an island type thing and trying to survive. You know what I mean? Like kind of. Obviously Gilligan's Island is a more,
it's definitely the comical choice,
easy version of that. But Lost would be cool because there'd be all that weird stuff going on. Like the smoke monsters and the the timer, and there's the characters are very interesting. And if you lived in that universe, you'd obviously be on the island because that's the whole show takes place on that island.
Yeah.
So
that's a good choice. I like that choice. You're living in a tropical world.
Yeah, exactly. And you're living on a beach, and it'd be hard to survive. But I'm an Eagle Scout, so I could show those people a thing or two. But
let's make a fire with 2 sticks.
Yeah, exactly. I can totally do that. But if I had to really, the one I think I would actually pick though is ironically is Star Trek. Because
that's not a bad choice.
I would like. Even if I was a red shirt or a yellow shirt, like I don't by any stretch of the imagination think I'd be, one of the main guys. But the cool thing about the Star Trek universe is it's kind of like what they do. They get to a certain age, they join the Star Academy or whatever it's called, and then they go zip around exploring space. And that to me, like I don't know, I kind of miss my calling, I guess, as an astronaut. But I really would like to explore space. To be honest with you, I think that'd be really cool. Even if I was just a deckhand or whatever. And it doesn't even have to be on the Enterprise. I'll go on any ship. I don't care. They have tons of different ships in the Star Trek universe, and it kind of just seems that that's what they do,
Yeah. No, that's a good choice. I like that.
So, anyway, that was my pick. You guys can make your picks over at facebook.com/Geek Revolution Radio. We usually put up like an image and then have you guys kind of tell us what you like. Did we do it for last week's hypothetical? I think it might have slipped our minds.
Yeah, I think it kind of fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
We'll have to get something up so people can.
So we don't have any reactions from last week, but anyway. So let's take a break here. When we come back, we're going to discuss horror movies. You're listening to Geek Revolution Radio.
Foolish mortals, if you value your souls, you can reach Attention Deficit Order Radio on iTunes and SoundCloud under Attention Deficit Order Radio by email at AdioRadio0@gmail.com, on Facebook under Attention Deficit Order, on Twitter at ADIO Radio, and at BoboBroadcasting.com.
Hello. Hello. You know me. I am Bennett. And you're listening to Geek Revolution Radio. Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, wait. We're
What?
doing this over again.
That was perfect.
No.
You didn't. What?
Okay, hold up a second.
Hello.
No.
What?
Okay, here. I'll
What?
cue you in, and we'll go.
You do
down.
not cue me in.
Okay, I'm not
Hello.
trying to say
I
anything.
work for ADO Radio, and I'm trying to do a plug for Geek Revolution Radio.
Okay, I'm gonna start it right now. Ready?
Okay.
Go.
Ready? Hello, this is Bennett. You know me. I am from ADO Radio, and I am promoting Geek Revolution Radio.
We gotta do
Right?
this one more time.
Is that the way it goes?
No, you did it wrong.
What?
No, okay, just Geek Revolution Radio.
Okay.
Make it legible.
All right.
Okay.
What, are you making fun of my speech?
No, I'm just enunciate. It's
I do
not
one
beyond your
take and one
grasp,
take
dude.
only. Under protest. All
Okay.
right, go ahead. Go. I'm ready. You all know me. You know what I do for a living? I'm Ben. I'm from ADO Radio, and you're listening to Geek Revolution Radio. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Mike W.
I'm Mike T.
And we're from the Other Mike and Mike show over at theothermikes.com. And right now, you're listening to Geek Revolution Radio. Bitches!
Welcome back to Geek Revolution Radio. I'm Ryan, and I'm here with Will, and we are here to break down some of our favorite horror movies. When we were kind of planning on putting the show back together, I don't know, I guess it was a couple months ago now. This was one of the show topics that got on the calendar very early on. So we're really excited to talk about this one, and we're going to break it down, I guess, in two different ways. We're going to go with the films that I guess scared us the most or had the most impact on our lives, if you will. And then we're going to also discuss some of the movies that are, really great movies that are horror movies. Will, you wanted to start with, I guess, discussing the subgenres and kind of lay down some ground rules. So why don't you go over that?
I mean, you really look at all genres of film, comedies, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, drama. I don't think there are as many subgenres in any other category than there are for horror.
Yeah.
Because there's so many. I mean, you're talking about ghosts, mummies, werewolves, vampires, sharks, zombies, psychos, serial killers, demons. There are so many different specific style of horror. Mm-hmm. That like putting together a list of your favorite or the ones that scared you the most. It's like there's so many out there to choose from that kind of represent their own little niche or subgenre.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like you have everything from sci-fi horror movies to, like you said, like serial killer, where things like Making a Murderer can be these are some of these things Dahmer, they're based on real life. Yeah, like things that actually happened.
I think those are like have a special category or a special asterisk to me because they're the ones that like could or are more likely to happen than say I'm never going to run into a vampire or a werewolf. I'm never going to run into zombies. As much as I love zombies, that it's not going to happen.
Right.
But serial killers, psycho crazy people, those there might be somebody living three doors away from me that's a serial killer and you just don't know it.
That's a very disturbing thought to think about.
Well, it's the reality of it. And I think that's why I like serial killer movies because it's so, that's the one that scares me, I think, the most. Ghosts are scary, sharks are pretty freaking scary to me. I hate deep water. I will never go in the ocean.
It's so funny you bring that up. So before we did this show this morning, there was this, I guess, new hotel or something that's, you know, somewhere very tropical, and they have underwater hotel rooms. It's almost like a little, it's almost like a little, like, you know, a boat, but it doesn't have an engine and it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And the top level is, you know, kind of like a sitting dock and stuff like that. And it's got like a, you know, you can swim around and it's right above a coral reef. But the bed is like 13 feet underwater. And like, you know, they were showing the promo video. They were like, oh, it's this wonderful place. It's $1,500 a night. And all the video they showed of it was all daytime stuff. And I'm like, ain't nobody going to want to go sleep 13 feet underneath the water at night when you cannot see what's out there. No, thank you. Like, I've seen Jaws. I don't need it. Homie ain't going to play that. No way.
Dude, I have always had a fear of deep water or whatever. Like, I remember when I was 6 or 7 going to the aquarium in Monterey, California, and they have like this glass bridge over like a enormous aquarium, or like their big feature that had like all these different fish and all these different, like, it was like the ocean essentially. This is like this gigantic room where the aquarium is, and you walk over this bridge and you could see down into the water, and there's like sharks swimming around. And I remember at 6 or 7 being petrified. Like, I wanted to be nowhere else anymore at that moment, you know?
It really begs the question to me, did the fear of sharks exist before the movie Jaws? I don't think it did. I really don't. I don't think people were that scared of being eaten by sharks until Jaws came out.
You know, I think there are people out there that had fear of sharks, but I don't think it was a mass national or global fear until Jaws. I think you're right.
Like, people like us that lived in Salt Lake City, nowhere near the ocean, I was still a little wary, like, going into lakes at night because of movies like Jaws.
Oh, yeah.
No, and it's like, it didn't even happen on the lake, but still, it's like, you never know. You can't see. I'm with you, dude. Like, the open water idea, no thanks. That's why I would never stay in that hotel room.
In Georgia, they have this lake called Lake Lanier, and you can't see the bottom. You can't, like, it's so muddy, murky, like the water, you can't see your hand when you're swimming in it.
Ugh.
And we would go, like, it's a popular lake. A lot of people go water skiing there and stuff. And I remember every time that I was, like, if I was skiing or tubing or anything like that, anytime that I wasn't up or in the boat, I was like swimming as hard as I could to get to the boat. I'm like, I've got to get out of here. Gotta go. Time to go.
Oh, that's funny. So, I mean, when we talk about horror movies too, ironically, if you think back to the very start of the genre, it all happened at Universal.
Oh, yeah.
With you know, you got Dracula, you got The Thing, you know, you got Swamp Thing, you've got all these movies they put together that were like the original, you know, scary, like, I guess, horror movies. And that's where the genre really started. Right. And I had a chance one year, it was, I don't know, I guess it's been about 5 years now, but me and Sammy went down to California, like right around Halloween one year. And we went, you know, did Disneyland, but then we went to Universal Studios because they were having this thing called Hollywood Horror Nights that they did at night, where they had like all these like haunted houses set up that were based on movies. At the time, they had actually the new movie, The Thing. They had a haunted house for that. They had a Walking Dead one. They had, like, you know, all this stuff. But it's one of those things where when you do the backlot tour that they have there, where they take you on the tram, where they take you down to where they shoot like all these movies, like they still shoot tons of movies down there. And they talk about the horror genre, and they, you know, they basically break down like, this is where the horror genre got its start, because at the time, Universal was like the only ones making monster flicks, you know, and that's where it all started from. And, you know, they're telling us about this as we're going down there on the tram, and then they pull up to the iconic Bates Motel. And when you go on there any other time, they drive you by it, you know, but during Hollywood Horror Nights at Universal Studios, they take you to the Bates Motel, and they stop the thing and open the doors, and they say, get out. And so you get out, and you're at the real Bates Motel. Like, you're there. And you basically, then it's like an adventure by foot, and you have to walk through the hotel, then you have to walk up the hill past, you know, the creepy house that Norman Bates lives in. And then you walk, you know, past there, and there's like some zombies and stuff like that till you get back to where the park's at. But, you know, when you're walking through the Bates Motel, they've got guys in the bedrooms that jump out and scary and stuff. And I'm just like, when I was walking through it, I was just like, I can't believe that I'm walking through the movie set of something as iconic as the movie Psycho, you know. And I'm at Universal Studios where the horror genre got its start, and I'm a big horror movie film like you are. And for me, it was just like, it was one of those things that was a really cool experience to do, because it's like, how many people can say they've done that?
Yeah, that sounds really cool. We went to Universal Studios in Florida, but I think it would be really cool to be able to do that.
Well, the one in California
awesome.
is better. The one in Florida, they don't shoot any movies there, right? It's just like there is a Universal Studios there, but there's no, they have the Harry Potter land, but the one in California, they actually, like, the back lot is where they still shoot all of Universal's movies.
That sounds really freaking cool.
And you go through all the sound stages, and, you know, Conan, I think, does a show down there. And I don't know, it's pretty cool. If you ever get a chance, go check it out, especially if you're there in October, because they do the Halloween Horror Nights, which I think starts at 7 p.m. and goes till 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So it's really, really cool. But anyway, the reason I brought that up is because, Will, you pointed out in our show notes that there are basically two different eras of horror films. There's everything before about 1990, and then everything after 1990, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a third category, which is like, you know, the classics, like you were mentioning. But like, when I look at it and I think about it, you know, the late 70s and the entirety of the 80s, I feel like that was like the golden age of horror movies.
Yeah.
And then we have, you know, horror movies today, and I think they're coming back. There's been a rise of like really good horror movies. Mm-hmm. I hear really, really good things about It Follows, and I still need to go watch that one.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like the timeline is like the 1990 is when it like really changed, or the golden age changed.
Yeah, because if you think of the movies that were in the 90s specifically, you know, 1990 to 2000, they put out maybe even the early 2000s, they put out a really, really bad horror movies.
Yeah, I mean,
that was the era of like Final Destination and Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. They have no rewatch value whatsoever now.
No, and I think you're right. Like, especially the 90s. I feel like the 90s kind of was the death of horror movies. Like, people were tired, and I say that you probably look at the late 80s and say, you know, the classics. Like, that's where you started getting like the 7th or 8th Nightmare of Elm Street, you know?
Yeah.
Where the franchise, they're trying to make too much, or it's just like you're telling the same story over and over again. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, the movies from the 90s and 2000s, or early 2000s, I would say, just there's a couple good ones, but the majority is just kind of quiet. Nothing really to, you know, sink your teeth into, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think we can definitely agree the golden age was the 80s, although I was born in the 80s, so not so much for like me, but I definitely, like, my mom is the person who got me into horror movies, because she grew up, you know, and was young in the 80s, and, you know, she still loves all those Friday and the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser. She still loves all those things because those were, you know, like when she was a teenager, and you know, that was the perfect age to be for those movies.
Yeah, I agree. I think that those ones, I think, are great to me, the 80s, because I didn't watch them until I would watch them basically between the ages of like 5 and 15, which is like probably the age where you're most malleable, where you're like clay, where you could be scared to no end.
Absolutely. Now let's break that down. That was kind of one of the things we wanted to start with. Was, as a kid, what were some of the movies that scared you the most, that had the most impact on you, I guess, as a child or a young teenager, young adult?
So when I would say, going back to like the very earliest, to the one that really scared the crap out of me, you know, the earliest one is probably Silver Bullet.
Okay. I've never even heard of Silver Bullet. What is it?
So I think the thing about this movie, and I don't want to talk about it too long, I think it's one of those more honorable mentions. But when I was like 10, like 9 or 10, my dad was flipping through the channels on Saturday afternoon, which was like, you know, today I don't think it holds as much value. But when I was like growing up, Saturday afternoon was like the day for horror movies, for weird movies on like the 7 channels that you got.
Yeah.
And he was flipping through and he stopped on Silver Bullet, and I didn't even watch very much of the movie, but what I watched was enough to stick with me for years.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically like a scene where this little boy gets ravaged by a werewolf, and you don't see it actually happen. You see the after effect. You see like this, 2 detectives looking at like a body underneath like a tarp.
Mm.
Oh yeah, this kid didn't have a chance, something like that. And I might have only seen like 5 minutes of it. Scared the crap out of me.
I'm looking it up on IMDb. It was written and is based on a novel by Stephen King. Did you know that?
Right. I did. And I mean, I didn't know it at the time. And he's definitely the one that scared me the most in my youth, I think.
For sure. Now, are there any other honorable mentions that horrified you as a child?
As a kid, I think it was definitely that one. Poltergeist definitely goes on that.
Poltergeist is strangely intense for a PG movie, right? It's PG.
And that's the thing. PG, it's one of those movies that I probably saw in my youth because of its PG rating.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those freaky, creepy movies for kids. It's that one always shocks me that it didn't at least get a PG-13.
Yeah. Well, it might have been at a time. I don't know when they started doing PG-13, but maybe it's one of those movies where it's like, oh, there wasn't a PG-13 at the time, because for me, the movie that scared me the most as a kid, and this movie is responsible for me getting literally no sleep from the age of probably 4 or 5 to like 12, being horrified, was Gremlins. And everyone loves Gremlins, and I love Gremlins now, but Gremlins was rated PG because it came out at a time where there was no PG-13, and it obviously doesn't. I mean, for an adult watching that, or the MPAA, I should say, watching Gremlins, they would go, this is a comedy. But for a 4 or 5-year-old watching this movie over at his friend's house,
there's nothing funny about it.
It was, dude, it terrified me. I was convinced for the most of my childhood that there was gremlins underneath my bed, and
oh man,
it horrified me. Like, it just, I remember for like 2.5 or 3 years specifically, like I just was always scared of gremlins, and it was just, oh, yuck.
I think another honorable mention is Cujo, and it's probably why I don't like dogs today. I didn't watch very much of that movie. It's another one of those Saturday afternoon movies, but like seeing a movie where a woman is trapped inside her car and there's a big dog just terrorizing her outside and she can't leave. The dog is just there. Man, that kind of, I've always had like a fear of dogs early in my life, and I think that is partly where it came from.
Ironically, another Stephen King thing.
Yeah.
I heard they're remaking Cujo, and I don't know how it's going to transfer, because I think the fear of dogs is something that is definitely phased out. In like since the 2000s, I would say. But my other honorable mentions, other than Gremlins, the other movie that I saw when I was about 4 or 5, again, over at my friend's house, where, my mom was like, where are you watching all these horrifying movies? It was always at my friend's house. There's a movie called Fire in the Sky. And this movie is about a guy named Travis that gets abducted by aliens out in the forest. And they do like all these really weird, creepy experiments on him. And then they just drop him back off on Earth. And they're just like, here you go. Good luck living your life, kind of thing.
Have at it, yeah.
That movie terrified me unbelievably as a kid, and I actually, like, it's one of those things where, like, I was always scarred by it, and I couldn't remember what the movie was called, so I, like, about 3 years ago, I was like, I'm going to find out what that movie was, and I'm going to find it and watch it, and I found out, oh, it's Fire in the Sky, and I watched it, and it still scares the crap out of me. It's still a really, really scary movie for me. And it led to kind of like my fear of, like, if I was going to pick the thing that I'm most terrified of, a common thing in movies, I guess you said it's kind of like, maybe, I don't know, like you said you're really scared of dogs. Mine is extraterrestrials. And I think it started early on from Fire in the Sky and was just catapulted after that when I saw a movie called Critters.
Yeah.
And Critters is one of those movies where like my grandma used to like take us over to Reams to rent movies when she was watching us. And my grandma is a really funny lady. Like she takes everything we say as truth. And we would go to this movie, this little movie place inside a grocery store and be like, oh yeah, we can rent all these horror movies that are rated R. My mom said it was okay, and she never like bothered to check with my mom. She was just like, oh, well, if your mom said it was okay, then that's fine. And so me and my brother got Critters. Same thing with Critters. It's about these, things that land from outer space, and they have all these jagged rows of teeth, and they just pretty much eat everything. And that kind of, between those two movies, I was just, Aliens, even now as an adult, kind of have a big play on my fears.
Yeah, no, I remember Critters. I remember like the poster specifically.
Yeah.
Because we would go to like the rental place in town, and I would see like this big massive ball, like just being like, what in the world is that? Those things look creepy. So I always remember Critters, and I remember like, again, going back to like Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, those crazy movies. And that's where I probably got my exposure to Critters.
So in preparation for this show, I actually watched Critters last night because I was like, I was going to pick, I had watched Gremlins not that long ago. I'd watched Fire in the Sky not that long ago. And I was like, I want to watch one of those like movies that scared me as a kid. And I was like, I haven't seen Critters for a really long time, probably since I was a kid. So I went back and watched it. It's a little intense, and I'll admit, like even my wife watched it with me, and it was definitely a little intense at times. Not as cheesy as I thought it was going to be, because it's like you said, when I saw the movie poster, I saw it on IMDb, I was just like, this movie's probably really cheesy, but it's actually pretty good. Some of the effects, the practical effects are a little cheesy, but you got to think about the era that it was made in. It's really a pretty good movie for the era, and I enjoyed it last night. It was a pretty good movie. It scared me at times, and still kind of like one of those like creepy things that's kind of like a cheesy 80s movie or whenever it came out.
Yeah.
So.
No, I like hearing you talk about it like makes me want to go back and watch some of these movies.
Yeah, you should check out Critters if you've never seen it. It's just kind of, and this is another one of those movies where they made like, I don't even know how many sequels.
Yeah, I think like at least 4.
Yeah. I don't know if they're any good after the first one, but the first one was kind of like, it's an interesting concept, and you can see that it was definitely, I looked it up, and it came out 2 years after Gremlins did. And there's a point in the movie where they kind of, in Critters, where they kind of poke fun at E.T. So I think the people that made Critters were kind of like trying to make a more realistic like or edgier version of Gremlins or E.T. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I could see that.
Kind of an interesting concept.
All right. So like we went through and picked specific ones that we wanted. And I think Critters was what was creepy for you.
Yeah.
The one movie that we actually picked, and not an honorable mention, but an actual pick, is Stephen King's It.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, man, this movie scared the crap out of me at probably 11 or 12 years old.
This is the clown one, right?
This is the clown one. So this is legit true story. I was staying at my cousin's house in Kentucky, and we were like down in the basement. Their rooms were in the basement, and I remember seeing advertisements for it coming up on that, like hey, coming up later in the week or even tonight, Stephen King's It. So it was like a made for TV movie, and I remember just not gonna watch that one. This looks super creepy, but somehow my cousins still managed to turn it on, still like watch it, and we didn't even watch it the whole thing, but I watched enough because it's like a 4-hour movie. Like they split it up into 2 nights, and ended up watching it and just being petrified. And so that night we decided that we were going to sleep upstairs in the girls' room. My cousin's sisters, they were in another town. They had gone and stayed with some of our other cousins. And so we're sleeping in their room. I'm on the floor. My cousins are in the bunk beds. And I remember falling asleep and having a dream where Pennywise the clown is sitting on a toy box that doesn't exist. Like the toy box is not really there in reality, but I'm sitting there in this dream on the floor. The clown is looking over me as I'm sleeping on the floor, and he's like, "I'm gonna get you, Charlie." And he was calling me like in the dream for some reason, you know, like dream logic. He's calling me Charlie. And so I wake up. I'm like, you know, heavy breathing. I'm freaking out, and I look under the door. There's like this green glowing light, and I can hear the clown walking down the hallway. "I'm gonna get you, Charlie." I woke up in a dream. I had a dream in a dream.
Oh.
So I woke up for real. So like I'm no longer dreaming. It was like Inception style, you know, Inception style nightmare.
You're trying to get back to, yeah.
Oh my goodness, man. It was freaking petrifying. Like I think I spent most of my, you know, at least I think I watched that at 11 years old. I think between 11 and 14, I could not handle clowns at all.
Oh.
Like I just straight up afraid.
So it is one of those things. I've never seen it. And that's, I guess, one of the reasons why I never understand the fear of clowns, because I'm just like, how can you possibly be afraid of clowns? You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, but I'm looking at it on IMDb, and it turned, I always thought that it was a movie. It's not, it's a TV miniseries, it says. And there's basically only 2 episodes, but it's like 4 hours long, like you said. So I'm actually kind of intrigued to go back and watch it. Have you watched it recently? Does it have any rewatch value, or is it one of those movies where it's, you know, doesn't translate very well?
I watched it recently, like in the last year, because I went back about, I don't know, it was probably a year and a half ago. I went and read the book. No, it was a year ago. So it was a year ago this time. I read the book and wanted to know like how the book is, because you know a lot of times, you know, the movies are a lot different than the book, and especially Stephen King. I love his writing. I've gone through and read like The Stand. I've read some of his other stuff. Mm-hmm. And so after I finished the book, I wanted to see how different it was, you know, to really refresh my memory. And I went and watched it again, and it's definitely not as good as the book. I remember like watching it going, this is so cheesy, so like a poor man's version of the book. Like it definitely doesn't hold as true. But for some reason, you know, at 11 years old, early 90s, you know, that movie somehow is a lot more scary. And I think at the time, you know, holds a lot more value. So I don't know if it's worth going back. I would say, you know, if you're not going to read the book, I'd say maybe go check out the made for TV movie. But I've heard that the reboot or remake of the movie has been in the works. I think
I've actually been reading about that kind of as you've been talking about it, and they keep saying they're going to make it, but it's like there's nothing out there that says that it's been greenlit or anything. So
yeah, well, I had heard that they had casted a guy for the clown. I'd heard that a lot of different things, but I'd never actually seen or heard anything to say that it was in any form of production. So I would almost go as far to say that, because I think they just like say Why the Last Man, it's probably they've had a director attached to it. They've had different characters or people casted for the role, but then it fell through.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'll ever be made, but if it does, I would say just almost don't make the book, because the book is such a bizarre story. Like it gets really, really weird, and the explanation in the book and how they did it in the movie are like night and day different. Like they're completely different. So, and I think it's difficult to tell the story of the book in any kind of visual form, because it's so, it's like galactic. It's like the monster is like this, you know, energy. It's like this pre-mortal or pre-earthly energy that crashed to Earth and has been, you know, essentially there since the dawn of time. And like in the movie, they really kind of don't even touch up on that. They don't, like, it's just
I got you
thing. So it's really kind of deep, but it was really weird.
Yeah, those made for TV movies from, like, this was made in 1990. They're usually not very good. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you. I might check out the book, but you know, if I don't think I've kind of been, the reason I haven't watched it, I guess, is I've been waiting to see if they're going to remake it because I'm interested to see how they can try and make clowns scary again. You know?
Yeah, I think you see this in TV shows and movies where they like draw connection to the fact that clowns are creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, like a true horror movie that's like kind of popular that draws connection to that fear. I don't think
Well, and
there'll ever be
you know, you
anything-
can always, like, people that are scared of clowns, and there's actually quite a few of them. I would say that if not 100% of them, close to 100% of them are afraid of clowns because when they were young, you know, about the age you were, they saw it. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's where it comes from.
I'd agree with that.
So it definitely had a big impact on the culture, which is interesting. But so my next pick is honestly, this is a movie that is one of my favorite movies. Is The Thing, and this is a Universal picture thing, and I'll take the new or the old. I like both of them the same, and the newer The Thing movie is actually a prequel to the original The Thing. But what a great concept for a movie where, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you don't know who the bad guy is, or who's been infected, and you know they're all kind of like, it's kind of like that, back to that thing where, you know, you meet somebody that looks like you and you have to try and convince somebody that you're the real you. This movie plays on those fears, except for it takes place like in Antarctica.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those movies that I love. The Thing. I thought the original movie was awesome.
The original movie is still good too. If you go back and watch it, it's still really good.
Before we started the show, you were telling me about the new one and like how great it is. And I remember when it came out and just never getting a chance to see it, and just hearing you talk about it is like, oh man, I need to check this one out.
Yeah, it's really good because they went back and ironically they made it a prequel. So the way that the original Thing movie starts is like this dog is running, right, like through the snow, and there's this helicopter flying shooting at it, and you know the people at this other base camp are like, why is this helicopter shooting at this dog, you know? And it turns out, you know, if you watch the original Thing, the dog is the Thing, you know, but the helicopter crashes and all the people die that are on it. Well, the newer movie they made is about how it got to the point where like the people figured out that the Thing was the dog, and they, you know, at the very end of the movie they get in the helicopter to chase after it to try and kill it to end the madness, and obviously they don't get it and they crash their helicopter, and then it goes right into the next movie. So
I might have to go and watch both of them like in order just to enjoy it that way.
Yeah, it was really, really good, and it kind of gives you an origin story of where the Thing comes from too, which the original movie didn't. So that's definitely one of my favorite movies.
I mean, it's definitely, I think, comes from that golden era, like the 80s, where movies were really, really scary, but they're also very like enjoyable or like well told.
Yeah, the filmmaking is good, which I think was lost in the 90s big time.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And was lost by like Friday the 13th 3.
Yeah. I mean, you start to get really campy, really cheesy.
Yeah.
You know, not even like the scares aren't even really that authentic.
Yeah, exactly. What is your next pick, Will?
So my next pick is another one of those movies that scared the crap out of me when I watched it, and it took me like 6 months to kind of get over. And this is The Sixth Sense. Like, I went and saw this in my early adulthood. Like, I was 18, I think, when it came out, 17 or 18. And I remember going and watching this one alone and leaving the theater just petrified, just shattered, shaky, afraid. And I remember going home to my room, and I had like in our house at the time, I was one of the only ones that had a bathroom attached to the room. My parents had their own bathroom, my sisters shared one, and then I had my own. And I remember like not wanting to get up out of bed and turn off the lights. I was so afraid and freaked out. And I'll tell you what it was about the movie. The woman in the pink robe, like something about the lighting in my room Like I was afraid she was gonna come out of the bathroom. Like I didn't even want to look. And I remember like falling asleep with the lights on. I was so freaking petrified.
Yeah, that's how you know a movie is scary, when you're willing to try and fall asleep with the lights on, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this is it got me, man. And I love the movie. I love the twist ending. You know, I definitely didn't see it coming at the time. And a lot of people will give M. Night Shyamalan a lot of crap, and he's deservedly so at times.
Well, here's the thing, though. That was much later that people disliked M. Night Shyamalan. This is probably his best movie he's ever done.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I like you said, it's later in his career where his filmmaking has become really kind of garbage, I would say. Like I was really, really disappointed with what was that one he did? The Happening.
Yeah.
I remember going and being really excited about it. I thought the trailers looked great, and I thought the movie was great. The first third of the movie was awesome, but then the second and final act of the movie, you're just like, this movie is garbage.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think The Sixth Sense is when horror movies started getting good again. They made The Sixth Sense in '99, right? And this is kind of like the era when horror movies kind of made a comeback as actual legitimate movies. And I think, you know, you kind of have to take this movie and, like, you know, the start of the Saw franchise in the same breath, because they kind of reinvigorated the horror genre with, like, here's some good movies that aren't, you know, Hellraiser 7 or Freddy versus Jason, where we're just beating the heck out of an old concept for a movie that was scary in the 80s, but in a, you know, a world where we have the internet now and those things obviously aren't real, not so scary anymore, you know?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think 2000 you started to see a rise of original stories, you know, new stuff, and I kind of feel like we've progressively gotten better over the years.
Yeah. So ironically, my third pick is also an M. Night Shyamalan film, and this is going to lead into, I guess, a conversation about a few different movies. But when I was 15 years old, 16, it was like one of the first times I ever went on my first date that I can remember, with like my friend Brett, and then we took these two girls that he knew. We went and saw a movie that M. Night Shyamalan made in 2002 or 2003 called Signs. I had no idea prior to going to see that movie what it was about. Had I known it was about extraterrestrials, I would have been like, homie ain't going to play that, because I know I'm terrified of these kinds of things. That movie, by the way, I still watch it probably once every other year or so. Still scares the heck out of me. But on the same hand, this is actually a really, really good movie. When you watch it and what it's about, and how, you know, it's called Signs, and it's basically they get to a guy that's lost his faith. If you strip all the extraterrestrial stuff out of it, it's a guy that's lost his faith, and his wife died from a guy that, you know, fell asleep at the wheel, and he was a preacher, and he loses his religion basically over it because he's mad at God. And then it turns out that there are all these like signs and things that happened after that led up to a point where he could save his family from the extraterrestrial aliens that had invaded Earth, because, you know, basically it ended up being kind of like a religious movie, if you really think about it, where God is looking out for us and there are signs all around us. You just have to be able to see what they are, kind of thing.
Yeah, I never actually got a chance to see it in theaters, but I went back and watched it later on like a Blu-ray DVD type thing.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, I guess because I was on a church mission at the time, so I didn't really get to feel the hype. Like, I didn't see trailers for it.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know a whole lot about it going into it either. And I remember like watching it and being like, this is, like you said, it's great if you don't even look at it as a horror movie because of all the storytelling. Yeah. But it's definitely creepy, man.
It played into like my fears from Fire in the Sky, right? Because it's a real similar kind of movie, but a modern age version. And we made a series of weird. So we went and saw that movie, and then we went to a corn maze. right afterwards.
Man.
And you've seen the movie. I mean, most of it is like the aliens are in the corn maze. Like that's where they are. Like, you know, it's all about crop signs and stuff like that. And so it was kind of the 1-2 punch of that. And I'll come right out and admit it that I was like I said, I don't think I was 16 yet, but I was real close. I spent at least 2 or 3 weeks after I saw that movie sleeping on the floor in my two sisters' bedroom because I couldn't sleep by myself. I was too horrified.
And that's the thing about horror movies is I think its best impact is during that time frame between like 5 and 15, where you become so impacted by the film.
Well, it's you can buy into it, like it's the wonder of childhood, right?
Yeah. Whereas then I think you go back and watch, say Signs today or the Fire in the Sky. If you've not experienced that as a youth, or like you watch like a genre of horror movies that don't scare you today.
Yeah,
look, they're never going to scare you, but like because you've got the alien bug, like you really are afraid of aliens. All alien movies, even today, will freak you out, and it probably would be the same for me today with clowns. I can't watch a clown movie without drawing back to my fear of Stephen King's It.
Well, and I know that even as an adult now, it still has a hold of me. My fear of. It's one of those things where, like, I honestly believe that, like, extraterrestrial life has to exist. However, I hope that they're not like the people in this other movie where they are running around abducting us, doing experiments on us, and then just dropping us off. Because, like, that's like a super douchey move. But when I was probably let's say I was 24, a movie called Fourth Kind came out. That has the girl from Resident Evil. Same thing. The movie, it takes place up in Nome, Alaska. These people are getting abducted while they're asleep at night, doing all these weird experiments on them, and it just and except for the cool thing about the Fourth Kind is that the Fourth Kind, they relate it with footage, like homemade footage of stuff that actually happened up there at that time.
Really?
So like it's almost like a reenactment of all these true stories that took place in Nome, Alaska. And that's the thing that really horrifies me about Fourth Kind is, like, at the end of the movie when they show the alien ship like pulling over this house and abducting these people, they play the footage taken from the dash cam of the police car at the exact side by side. And so you're like, this is real, like, stuff that was happening up there. And I'm just like, all kidding aside, if aliens do exist and these douchebags are coming down here and they're like abducting us like in secret and performing experiments on us, that is really horrible of them to be doing that. But like, if I was really to think about it, and if it was the other way around, if our government was on another planet, they would do the same thing, right? Like it wouldn't be like Star Trek where they would be like, hey, we're here and we're here to help you. They would do like all kinds of weird covert missions and it would
definitely be shady.
Yeah, it'd be super shady. And I'm just like, I don't know. That's what scares me about it all, Will. I don't know.
There's definitely something to think about. Like I remember the Fourth Kind, but I never actually watched it. And I think you're right. I think like there's something like I don't know. I don't play into the aliens as much. I believe they're out there, but I don't know how much of an impact we have on our Earth. But there's definitely something there, like to where this is one of those genres that could be just as true, opposed to
at some point it could fall into the serial killer. Whereas right now it's sci-fi, but it might not always be.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think my last pick, it's not so much one of the ones that really scared me growing up. But it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies. And that's Cabin in the Woods, which I think we both really are big fans of.
Joss Whedon, yeah.
I love this movie, and I don't think it's definitely kind of not a traditional horror movie in the sense that it's like a classic single monster movie, because it kind of like pokes fun at all horror movies, I think.
Yeah.
Like it's this organization that's essentially terrorizing teens for the purpose of sacrifice, but they kind of draw from like all elements of horror to kind of accomplish that. And I think that was what was fun about it. You know, you're seeing like, oh man, like there's zombies, there's ghosts, there's werewolves, there's monsters, and it was, you know, you have a secret organization that's like hidden under this building or like this cabin.
Well, that's what's cool about this movie is like the horror genre has been beat to death over the years, like we said.
Yeah.
And Joss Whedon put together this movie where it started out definitely as a traditional horror movie, but then it takes like a super like left turn. And they're like, oh, there's actually this organization that's like setting all this stuff up, and they kind of like peel the curtain back a little bit of all these things, but then they take you right back into a horror movie when they all escape, you know?
Right. It's like it's chaos in this building where you've got like all these different kind of horror
creatures,
creatures going at it. It was really fun.
Yeah,
I think that's what I loved about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, and we're kind of jaded on horror movies, I would say, as a you know, watching audience, and this was kind of like a different take, a different spin on the genre that made it like interesting and fun again, you know?
Yeah. So I want to mention that there's probably like 4 movies that we didn't talk about. Not that we don't feel like they are deserving of discussing in horror movies, but I think they're so big that we owe an entire episode to them. So like to our fans or people listening, like, why didn't you talk about The Shining? Well, The Shining is such a great movie.
It needs its own episode.
Yeah, it needs its own episode, man. I think The Exorcist is another one of those films.
The Exorcist is a movie that deserves its own episode of this show because it is still a scary movie.
Oh man,
and it's based on a real life thing, you know.
Yeah, it is definitely scary. We mentioned Jaws earlier.
Yeah,
you know, the Jaws might need its own show just because it's. I don't know if we'll do a show about it because we dove into, you know, the fact that it's you know, fear of water is essential. You know, that's something that was prevalent in my life. But I think another movie that we've mentioned on our show before, The Mist from 2007. That movie is probably at the top in my top 20 of all movies of all time.
Yeah, that movie, you know, and now that you're mentioning it, I think that I have memories of us doing a review of that movie in the KU studios at some point. So it might be one of those movies.
I think I remember we did a live episode outside of the library, and I remember talking about it, but I don't remember if we dove into it in its entirety.
I don't know. I'll have to look back, and if not, we're gonna have to. That's a great movie. I really like it.
It's just seriously one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
But to go, like, there are other honorable mentions. I think the movie Teeth. Are you familiar with this movie?
I've never heard of it.
It's called Teeth. So basically, this woman living near a nuclear power plant gets a set of teeth in her hoo-ha that chomp. It's funny, but it's also very frightening at the same time.
That's great.
It's one of those kind of cheesy, campy indie horror films where this girl basically is living with the fact that she's got like a full set of teeth down there.
Yeah,
it's really kind of funny. But like, I remember our old friend Ben. I tried to get him to watch it before he got married, and he wouldn't watch it with me. He's like, I'm about to have sex for the first time because he, you know, not, you know, and because Ben was like just petrified of watching that movie before we're getting married. I was like, dude, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it.
That's funny.
I think other honorable mentions are the Rob Zombie films, House of a Thousand Corpse, Devil's Rejects. Those movies are pretty freaking creepy, pretty scary, just in their own right.
Yeah, I'd give honorable mentions to definitely to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I actually like the newer mid 2000s one was pretty good. Also, I live just down the road from where that happened. Like, I'm not very far here in Austin from where that happened. And then I also got to give an honorable mention to the Evil Dead movies, the classic old one that's kind of a comedy with Ash, and then the newer one. And Will, you mentioned before we started the show, you haven't seen the Evil Dead from 2013. They basically took the old movie and they stripped all of the comedy out of it and just did it as like a straight horror movie, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was very intense.
I definitely want to see it, but it's hard to see scary movies with a toddler.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I've also got to give an honorable mention to The Ring, and then what's the other one? It's not on this list that we made.
Is it The Grudge?
The Grudge is good.
Came out around the same time as The Ring.
Sinister.
Yeah, that's one I haven't seen, but I hear like it's on a lot of top lists for scary modern movies.
If you want to watch a newer movie that will terrify you, Sinister, and then there's Insidious. Have you seen Insidious?
Yeah, I haven't seen either one. I remember both of them. I remember trailers for both of them, but just never got
if I was going to give you homework for where to start, if you're wanting to watch a horror movie, Insidious and Sinister. Those are two movies. I think they're actually made by the same people. They're terrifying.
Yeah, same company or same people. Yeah,
they're terrifying. They're really good. But let us know some of your favorite horror movies. Go over to facebook.com/Geek Revolution Radio and let us know. You can also hit us on Twitter. I'm at Geek Rev Radio, and Will. What's your handle on Twitter? I can't remember.
It's _Will_Hatton Hatton.
Sweet. You can find all that on our website and stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
You got anything to mention before we wrap up this week?
Nah, man, and it's hard. I really feel like it's hard putting together a list of anything that's so diverse as this. Like a couple of weeks ago when we did the episode on our favorite women in geekdom, like I felt like that one was just as hard because there's so many out there. Like there are literally dozens of movies that we didn't talk about from the 70s and from the 80s and today. Like I've never seen Rosemary's Baby, but it's literally on the top like 5 of most movies.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's movies that we didn't talk about, and so definitely if there's something that we missed, we want to hear about it. We'll probably have to do like another episode later on down the road where we like horror movies part 2, where we talk about the ones that we missed.
Absolutely, that sounds like a great idea. So check that out. Go to facebook.com/Geek Revolution Radio. Make sure you check out our friends show. We got the other mics. .com for the other Mike and Mike show. They're doing a wonderful show on there. They're on a hiatus for a couple weeks because they're on vacation, but when they come back, they're gonna have some good shows for you to check out. And then also check out our friends over at Stupid Wankers, and check those guys out. It's a fun time. So ADO Radio also, I know they're a little hard to find, but if you just Google ADO Radio or Attention Deficit Order Radio, you can find their SoundCloud page, and that's where their podcast lives. So until next time, I'm Ryan.
I'm Will.
Live long and prosper, and may the force be with you. GeekRevolutionRadio.com.
You've been listening to Geek Revolution Radio, hosted by William Hatton and Ryan Bennett. For more information about Geek Revolution Radio, go to GeekRevolutionRadio.com. Feel free to interact with the show at facebook.com/Geek Revolution Radio. The intro song is called What You Want. The credit song is Riptide. Both are composed by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons. The views and opinions expressed on Geek Revolution Radio are those of the panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our sponsors. Thank you for listening.